Hey, and welcome to the Happy Farm D podcast. I'm Alex Barker, the founder of the Happy Farm D, and today I'm joined by a super special friend, the specialist of all friends, my special friend. It's you, Cory, my friend Cory Jenks, founder of ImprovRx. I've known Cory now, I think, 4-ish years.
Oh, presidential terms worth, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've accomplished just as much as a single president, which actually is not saying much about either of us.
Listen,
Zing!
we've managed to not irritate 50% of the population. So I call that a
True.
win.
That
Yet.
is true. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Cory does quite a bit of work in the world of improv and consulting for businesses, helping them deal with the unexpected. I don't want to lean too much into what I think he does. I'd like him to tell us, but that's not where he started. We'll get into that and we'll talk about how the outside forces of the worldwide pandemic literally made his business come to a crashing halt and what he did and how to pivot. And I think you, listener, my good friend, are going to learn how you can pivot when you feel like things are outside of your control. So let's get creative. Cory, how's it going?
Never better, Alex. Never
Cool.
better. Yeah, I was
Cool.
going to make a joke about pivoting in basketball, but I know you don't like sports, so we'll just move past that and
Thank
get
you.
into the funsies of what we're going to talk about today.
So what does ImprovRx do? How does that help people?
What I do is I help businesses, healthcare organizations, non-healthcare organizations create cultures that can not only deal with the unexpected, but thrive in it. I take my experience as an improv comedian, which can sometimes seem very far away from healthcare, and really teach organizations how to listen, how to live in the moment, how to respond. And like an improv comedian thinks, there are no mistakes, there are only gifts. So how can we turn whatever happens to us into that gift? And along the way, we have fun doing it. Employees enjoy their jobs more. Patients enjoy their experiences more. And I get to go have fun and play with a bunch of cool people that work in healthcare and outside of healthcare too.
It's right up my alley because it just sounds like a fun job.
It is a fun job. It can be a challenging job. There's parts of it that are not fun. The parts where you have to try to reach out to people and explain what you do that don't give you a wonderful podcast platform, that aren't willing to listen, that are ironically the ones that are most suited for learning these lessons. It's just like, it's a catch-22, right? So that part's not as fun. And we could talk about maybe some other challenges that have been less fun. But all of us, if you're listening to this, you're likely a pharmacist. We have parts of our job that are challenging, but it's through those challenges on the other side that we get those happy moments, right? Those challenging patients you're able to reach, the getting that wonderful, cool job that the Happy Farm D helps you find, hitting the metrics for your retail pharmacy. I'm just kidding. That one is not fun on any level,
No.
unless you are a shareholder of that organization, in which case you will laugh all the way to your 401k bank.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're a pharmacist, that's the time for you to boo. It's too bad this isn't live. Boo.
Yeah. See, we have managed to anger lots of people, much like a president, Alex, and we're only like 2 minutes in.
Yes. Life achieved, podcast over with. So, it sounds very much like Whose Line Is It Anyway, but with a purpose, right?
Yeah. Well, they did have a purpose to entertain and make ABC lots of money through advertising dollars. But yeah, I think that at the surface, you could look at improv comedy. And if you're not familiar with it, it's a form of comedy where everything's made up on the spot. And you could look at the surface and it's a way to have fun. It's a way to entertain, which is what I have done for a decade here in Tucson at my theater performing. But at its root, the deeper you get into it and the longer that I did it, I realized that there's these important life lessons that many people don't learn along the way, no fault of our own, especially pharmacists. We're so busy on memorizing things for tests and applying and building our CVs. But the real deeper purpose is to help make sure that when you're in the room with that patient, that nurse, that doctor, that they feel seen, heard, and understood. And it sounds simple. Listening, super simple. We've been doing it since we were babies. And a sound would startle us into crying. We were listening to that sound. Mm-hmm. But if anyone out here has ever experienced the other side of healthcare, where you are getting cared for and not heard, you realize we don't do a great job of this. And so that deeper purpose is is helping to create that better healthcare experience.
I love the purpose behind it. It makes total sense. It's everything that I wish would happen in healthcare. Don't need to get it too deep into it, but I know my wife and I's experience with some of her illnesses have been treated very much like a number, right? Not a person with like actual problems that need to be addressed.
Mhm.
And it would have been great to have that experience from the health care practitioner side of like, okay, you're a person, not a bunch of checklists,
You're
right?
not a billing code. You're not a diagnosis. And what I really like to emphasize is this world of control and the lack of control that we feel. And I think we're going to get into some of the lack of control that has kind of helped me pivot. But
Yeah.
one thing I'll say, my wife's in healthcare. She's a nurse practitioner. We've both done improv training. She has not gone as deep into it as me. But one thing that both of our patients will give us, and we'll both agree we're not the best pharmacist or nurse practitioner, is we'll get that feedback that you're the first person who's listened to me. Now, on the one hand, feather in our hat, awesome, we did a good job, we listened, hooray. On the other
Yeah.
hand, that's like a sad testament to the way people have been treated. And what I emphasize is like, I can't change your diagnosis, I can't change your copay, I can't change if the company's going to coupon for your med, but I can control the experience that I give you. And I feel like I get a lot of forgiveness from patients when it's something beyond my control that happens to them that they don't like, if I'm at least on their side listening and paying attention to them.
For those eager job listeners listening to this, little career tidbit, one of the strongest tied skills in your back pocket to a satisfying career are soft skills. So it's the interperson communications, right? Your leadership ability, your ability to handle conflict. If you've got awful soft skills, challenging. And so what Cory just said is totally true. It's backed up in science. Lean into it. And as I was preparing for this podcast, I was thinking about a lot of the challenges that pharmacy's gone through over the last, I don't know, ever since the beginning.
Since the beginning of the first mortar and pestle that were rubbed together.
Yeah, and when they I don't know if you know this, but back in the day, they used to cut up goats and grab rocks that were in goats' guts, and they would use that as tinctures. Okay, that's like the beginning of pharmacy. I couldn't imagine cut open a goat to like gather medicine for my patients, but I think the COVID pandemic is probably worse than that.
Yeah, all I can say is pharmacists were much hardier back in the day. It sounds like we were
Yeah.
much more rough and tumble than we are now.
Yeah, probably. But when I think about the COVID pandemic, it's been a rough go of it. Some
Mhm.
people still think we're in it, depending on what state that you're in. I'm not going to say which ones, but you know who you are. And I know that a lot of people feel like, man, this has made a bad situation worse. Now,
Mhm.
during the beginning of the pandemic, you were a full-time clinical pharmacy specialist, practicing at the top of your license, helping people all over the world. And at the same time, you wanted to build this really a business, a speaking business. And, just to give people context, like what is it that Cory does? He goes into facilities, gives them workshops, gives them training, and helps them improve with their team, with their patients. And then the pandemic hits. What's going through your mind? Because to anyone who doesn't get it already, the pandemic would literally kill your business, stop all revenue, stop
Mhm.
any kind of speaking engagements or
Mhm.
trainings. What's going through your head?
Well, I think the first thing that was going through my head is like, as you mentioned, I had a full-time job. So I had not fully left the practice of pharmacy. And I still have not fully left the practice of pharmacy as of the end of 2022 when you're listening to this. But 2022 was going to be my year, Alex. I had a TEDx talk lined up. I was going to hit the
Yeah.
road. We had big plans to get all these assets to position myself as like the pharmacy comedy improv guy that's going to just go in and have a great time with your group. And so obviously speaking engagement stopped. There's no travel going on. So what's going through my head is ideas, because I had all of these ideas. Like I, at that point, had been doing improv for 8 years. I had pivoted to this idea of doing it for healthcare because I knew that my personal lifestyle was not conducive to wanting to go try to make a living of this as a full-time comedian, in one of the big cities. And that was fine. I had a small kid at the time, had another on the way. I like Tucson. It's got a decent comedy scene, but it's not where the talent scouts are going to find the next person for Saturday Night Live. But I developed all these lessons from improv because it had made me a better pharmacist. So I had these ideas. I had been outlining these ideas for a while. And so March 2020 hits. I'm obviously not going to be speaking. I had these ideas. I had 3 months till my next kid was born. So in my head, I said, okay, what can I do to make the most of this time being, stuck at home with nothing to do, no going out, no socializing. So I said, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write this book. Yeah. I'm going to write this book. I've been thinking about this one that's over my shoulder here. Permission to Care, Building a Healthcare Culture That Thrives in Chaos, published 2022. Go get yourself a copy or 7. I got Hanukkah coming up, so you get 8 nights. Get one for each night.
There you go. To the same person, right?
To the same person. I can sign something different for each night.
Absolutely.
It's not like I was like, yes, pandemic, speaking career stopped. But I did say, okay, I cannot control this, but I can control, this time I have, this quiet time that it's going to get less quiet with another kid coming. So I wrote my book, and I had that asset because I knew that going out as a speaker, when you say author, you add author to your credentials, they pay you more. Which is nice. Like, I don't want to say that's the only reason I did it, but it also helps to establish expertise. Like if you want to be an expert in something, having written a book on it, if it's a good book, should show that you are an expert in that. And so now I have a book that says objectively, like, Cory has done this book. He's done this research. He's applied it, and he's an expert to help you and your group. So that was all I could do. Like, I could sit and scream into a pillow, which I did as well at times. But in between, I wrote this book.
What I'm hearing from you, Cory, is that you didn't write this book out of the goodness of your heart.
Not quite. Like, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but I don't think that's, like, we work as pharmacists. We don't do it out of the goodness of our hearts. We worked hard. We sacrificed a lot, and to get well compensated for something we do. And I think if you're going to try to do a side hustle, a main hustle, like, you got to have some sort of plan. I'm just going to write a book and see what happens is like a terrible plan for writing a book. But if you say, I'm going to write a book so that when I go to market myself to organizations, I can say, well, I can come speak to you and I can provide this book for your group so that when I leave, they will have this handbook of things to do and work on when I'm gone. And so, yeah, it wasn't totally out of the goodness of my heart, but it doesn't mean I didn't love writing it. It doesn't mean that I don't really enjoy,
I just sharing that. I mean,
yeah.
I think because our profession at large is viewed as a cost center and one where we're not paid for services typically, right? That gets baked into lots of different aspects with our professional identity. In fact, I remember a common problem, and you and I have talked about this ad nauseum about how little pharmacy speakers are paid within our profession. But a problem that I had, and I think you've had too, is that some people think we just do this for free. Yeah. like somehow we're going to give you a medication and get money from insurance, which maybe we should. I don't know. We start handing out like Xanax pills or something, but we're not going to do that. No. But for you, I think your purpose behind what you're doing is ultimately life-changing. It feels so good as a patient when you finally feel heard.
Yeah. And I see that in my practice to this day. It's one of the reasons why I've still wanted to, what I love going out and speaking, and like you said, this is a fun job. And to get to do that all the time would be awesome. But I also I have certain parts of my clinical practice. I work in ambulatory care that I really am passionate about as far as lifestyle and things like that. But the thing that I want to stay connected to practicing, because then I get to keep seeing that day to day. Like, I don't want, this is going to sound very egotistical. And I promise Alex knows I have the tiniest little ego because I have zero self-esteem, but like I'm different. Like I notice that as I practice, when I interact with patients, like the interactions are different than when I see them working with other providers, whether they're pharmacists, nurses, doctors, and these aren't bad providers. I've just approached things differently. Patients seem to, I can see the moments where they're like, they relax and they're willing to share. They're willing to bare their soul, because I work in diabetes and obesity. There's a lot of demons in obesity and diabetes, and being willing to have that trust, like that's another part of those soft skills, is building trust. Like regardless, this, besides the weird way, weird way I practice with diabetes management, mostly lifestyle focused, ironically, as a pharmacist, but getting that connection and that trust with patients is paramount. Like you can come up with the best plan in the world, but if they don't care and listen and don't feel like they've been heard, they ain't gonna do it. So that's where I really relish the application of these skills.
So going kind of spinning off there, we're talking about pivots.
Yes. Pivoting from that.
I think a lot of people feel stuck in their careers. They've been looking, they've been trying, and instead of doing the same old, they could be doing other things or different things. How did you stumble upon the idea of writing a book as being the way you would pivot? Because in the beginning, when everything was shutting down, I think it would have been very easy to say either, well, I'll just not do anything. I'll just pause, or I'll give up. Right. I think that would have been a viable option as well. What made you say, okay, I've done a little bit of this work, now I'm going to write a book?
I think that when someone's feeling stuck, I like to go back to like, what do you enjoy doing and what are you already good at? Now, writing is good. Quote, good at writing is relative, right? Am I Ernest Hemingway? I am not. But I had a lot of experience writing.
You mean you're not a womanizer?
No, I am not. I'm the opposite of that. My wife will attest. She's got zero qualms about me going out on the road or anything like that. She's like, good luck. I'm like, it's true. You're right, honey. I can't believe you married me. But aside from not being a womanizer, like I had experience writing. I had written over 200 blogs for my undergrad as like a student perspective blog where I got paid to write. It was kind of cool as a sophomore, junior in college. So I had enjoyed the process, and I had always enjoyed writing, and I tried just writing on my own. So it's like, well, I already can kind of do this. I already have an outline. So the barrier to doing that is much less than me. Like, I want to do the Cory Jenks video series on this. Like, no, I don't know how to like record, edit, and be good on camera. But so why would I make things harder than myself? And I guess you've just kind of sparked an idea in me that sounds terrible. And writing a book does not sound lazy. But for me, it was like the lowest barrier to doing something. And we're all kind of wired for that low, like the lowest amount of energy we're willing to expend. And it's like, I had a computer, I had Microsoft Word. Okay, this is like, I can do this. I didn't want to have to do a lot of extra steps because life is hard enough as it is. So if you are putting hurdles in front of yourself, you ain't going to do it. But for me, it was my wife's, I have 45 minutes from when my wife leaves to pick up my kid from daycare till when he gets home. Okay, go 45 minutes. I can do this. Trying to sit for 8 hours in a cabin alone and do this book. No, just did it chunks at a time. Win the 5-minute battles here and there. And before you know it, you have a manuscript.
Yeah. If I recall the stats, it's something like 80% of Americans want to write a book. Less than 3% actually do.
Yeah.
Anyone's capable of writing a book. And it's actually a really brilliant, career strategy for anyone out there that's ever interested in actually becoming an expert on something or an authority. Wow. Someone who writes a book means they've done a lot of research, they've done a lot of thought and effort, and they want to convey some sort of message. It's beautiful, it's a smart way, but it is a ton of effort and energy to do it. I mean, start to finish, how long did your pivot take you writing this book?
I wrote the book in 3 months.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Yeah, I know. Like not to brag, but like my son was coming in June, and I said
first draft or like
the first
finished?
draft. The first draft.
Okay.
No, so I finished.
That makes
it in
me
June.
feel better.
Yeah, no, I finished the first draft in about 3 months, And I gave it to a buddy who was kind of sitting on his hands because of COVID too. And he gave me some initial edits. And then it was another about, I'd say year until I got it to a publisher. So it was like, I wasn't like, I wrote it, I need to publish it right now. It was, okay, I have it. It's written. Someone else has read it and like proof of concept. And he's someone who's written as well and is very introspective and someone whose opinion I appreciate. So someone else has read it and said, this doesn't suck. Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
When the time was right, then I took it to a publisher. So from that like initial idea to publishing was 2 years, but the first draft was 3 months. It was, and that's, if you're going to write a book, like my advice is to write, and don't judge. Just get all your crap vomited onto the paper. There will be time for editing. That's the hard part. But if you come in with lots of stuff and you chisel down to the very best, that's great.
I think writing is such a way to overcome whatever challenge you have. I mean, ultimately, when it comes to networking, typically you're writing something in general. But I think if you're wanting to make a career change, hopefully it is based on something that you love, like you said. And everyone has access to writing something. You can write it on LinkedIn for absolutely free. You could pay for a website if you wanted, but you could write on medium.com for free. I mean, there's just so many different avenues to get your thoughts out. And the other beautiful thing about the strategy is that when you're writing something, you can take that and go send it to people, right? And get them interested. Albeit that I don't think we're recommending you write a book because that's an insane endeavor, but you definitely can. And I know for a fact, Cory, that you've sent your book to a few people, and that in turn has gotten them interested in what you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I ended up getting a book signing that was unpaid this fall that has turned into
that's so cool.
That turned into a paid engagement in 2023. Because I mean, the series of events, I send a book to someone. Oh, that's cool. You want to do a signing? Great. It's unpaid. Fine. And then while I'm there, I get interviewed by of all organizations, CrossFit, about my book. And then someone sees that interview. It's like, he seems good for our event. And so now I'm going to go get a little bit of money to go talk and work with an organization because I had this asset. And it's funny. I was talking to someone today who works in publishing and the challenge of prospective writers who say, how long till I make my investment back? If what I did is I paid a company to help me publish my book. It wasn't like I, signed $1 million contract. No, it was here, I'll pay you money. And then I get a cut of whatever sold. And they were saying how someone wants to know, like, well, can you guarantee I'm going to get my investment back? And it's like, no, you can't. It depends who buys your book. But in my mind, if that book, even if it's not a direct sale, if it leads to an opportunity that gives me some income, I call that return on investment for sure.
Yeah, it's about publicity, right? One of the things that we know about careers and relationships is that trust is at the core of it. And in order to build trust, to be able to be vulnerable enough to like share your thoughts online, as long as they're constructive, positive, well worded, it's one of the easiest ways to build relationships. I remember early on, one of the strategies that I was recommending that still works is basically coming up with a report about something where you do in-depth research on a very specific subject meant for a very specific company and purpose, and then showing them that research, showing them what you've concluded is an amazing way to start conversations and ultimately be like your application. It's just a much shorter version of writing a book, and one that does not take as long because, as you and I can attest, writing a book, it's like sailing into the deep, darkest places of your soul. And you go, oh, this place is ugly. I think I'm just stupid. Like, I don't think anyone's going to read this.
Yeah, it's interesting that you could spend all this time and effort getting something published, literally published on Amazon. People reading, strangers reading your book. And you're like, I'm not really an author. Like, I still struggle with that identity. Like, am I really an author? I mean, like, I have a book.
Yeah.
Does that make me a good author? And I've sold this many copies, but I could have sold that many copies. And so
Right.
but that's
It's a
for
part of the
those,
journey.
that's part of the pivot, right? If you are stuck in the same repetitive pattern and it's hard, like it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. And so if you're stuck in that like comfortable, the comfort of mild discomfort, where it's like, I get paid pretty good. They give me this, they give me that. And that's fine. But if you have this deep burning thing inside of you that you want to get out to the world, you're going to have something gnawing at you till you do it. And for me, I feel like this pivot has been a catalyst, because I wrote that book and I have not stopped writing since then. It has kind of popped the cork on my love of writing, or rekindled it from back when I was an undergrad. So that just means I have an idea for another book. It means that I'm writing a newsletter regularly. It just, sorry world, you're getting my thoughts, or not sorry. I don't know. You read, you listen, read, and tell me. But yeah, it's been a fun pivot, and aside from just, I like, everyone would love that instant success. I would have loved to have had that TEDx talk, and then it goes viral, and then it's, oh, we need Cory here, we need him there. But this journey is helping me appreciate every little thing along the way. And it's the cliche, everything leads to where you are in this moment. And I'm pretty darn satisfied with where I am, even if it's not on a yacht.
Yeah. What I'm reminded of is like all of the pitches I get from consultants or experts about certain things. And they talk about how easy it'll be if you just follow our program, you just do our thing. And we all love sure bets. We all love investments that make 100% sense. But when it comes time to like face reality, it's always not totally what we hoped for.
Yeah.
But the beauty, I suppose, of pivoting, whether you want to write or not, because not everyone wants to get their thoughts out or be public.
Yeah. If you're listening, you do not have to pivot to writing. That's just what Cory Jenks chose. And your path is not, this path does not guarantee your success.
Yeah, there's no signed documentation for the podcast. Don't worry. There's no written consent or anything.
Okay.
But I think for everyone's pivot, there's such wisdom in leaning into what is easy. And for most people, I mean, you just went through this because you made a career transition. The traditional getting a job is not easy for most people. Sadly, it's the strategy that most people rely on. But most people have a gift or talent for them to do that they just do it without even thinking about it. And one of our team members was just even commenting that his coach told him, you're a people pleaser. And he said he told his wife that. She's like, yeah, I know that. And he said, why don't you tell me that? Like, and whatever that is, whatever that thing about you is probably at the source of whatever your pivot could be. Whether you like speaking, whether you like writing, or you like helping people one-on-one, whatever that special secret is probably the key to making a real pivot. So my encouragement or the action step of this is to find whatever that is and lean into it, ideally helping someone else in the process.
Yeah. And that's, knowing yourself and being willing to do that. And I, not to just be a shameless homer of Alex Barker, but like listening to this podcast. So I've kind of come around to this idea that we're all brainwashed. We all wash our brains in something. So if you are thinking about making these pivots, listen to other people who've done it. Like, hopefully, like, I'm not out here saying like, I'm an inspiration and I'm going to help you because I can, I'm not.
You're my inspiration, Cory.
Oh, thank you, Alex. But if you are surrounding your brain with the sound waves and the visuals of others who are doing it, but doing it and not like a showy LinkedIn kind of way, not to sound like skeptical of those with the big LinkedIn success, because I am certainly not one of those with a lot of LinkedIn followers and posts that go viral. Because it's a double-edged sword of like, oh, they're doing so good, I'm terrible. But if you're surrounding people with like a good mindset who are supportive and also realistic, like working with you, like Alex and I have worked together, he kind of helps me out. Like, he's realistic with me. He's not like, this time next year you will be making $1 million speaking, and I guarantee it. And so if I'm not there, I'm like, oh, I failed. But helping that grounding of like, okay, like for those of you starting out, do this for a year and look where you go in a year and compare yourself to yourself. And again, it's a cliche because we're trained to compare ourselves to others. It's just evolution. But if you can sit in yourself and see the progress you have made, and if 2023 you is better than 2022 you, then you've won, and you're moving in that right direction.
What better way to really be honest with yourself by comparing who you were versus who you wish you were or someone else, which is frankly just impossible. It's a lose-lose.
Like genetically, it's impossible unless you are a twin, and then you are still your own person. So you cannot be someone else, save for some awesome Nick Cage sci-fi movie. That would be great.
I'd watch that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I knew doing a podcast with you would make me want to do other tangents besides the subject matter of what we were supposed to talk about. Moving on.
Sure.
If you were to talk to that version of Cory before the pivot, before the pandemic, who was working at a different job, what do you wish you could convey to him about this pivot that you have made?
Oh man, talking to myself from the future and the past. I'm an improviser, and this is the question that always trips me up.
It's been asked before.
I know. And I'm still bad at it. But I think if I could tell myself anything, it would be to expect the peaks and the valleys and to ride them out, because it is just the natural course of life. It's a great song called The Bug, and sometimes you're the windshield and sometimes you're the bug, and it just feels like that. And to just, one thing that we've talked about is like persistence, and it's very easy to quit. And so I didn't quit. So I wouldn't go back and tell myself, don't quit. But I would just sort of say, when those times are tougher and you're frustrated, let go a bit and don't work so dang hard. Like, stop working hard and let things come. And if they come a little bit slower, but you're happier along the way, that's okay. Because pharmacists, we're perfectionists. We like to blame ourselves for everything. So if I could give myself that advice, it would just be like, expect the peaks, expect the valleys. When the valleys come, just keep taking a step. Just keep taking a step. Focus on the processes you put in place to have success, and you will get back to the peaks and enjoy it, because you will have a valley again soon. So that's just it sounds, again, it's almost like the improv lesson of listening. It seems so simple, but how many of us like fall into that valley, whether it's with a relationship, a job, a side hustle, whatever it can be. And so you just got to sort of like, instead of doing this, just try to live that life in that nice even keel.
Yeah. What better way for me to pivot into what we do at the Happy Farm D? It's all about journey before destination. We often think that we'll be happier, better off in the future. And yeah, we all have goals and aspirations that we want to obtain for, but what better way to get there faster than if you are with someone else rooting and cheering you on when you're in those valleys, and gently taking you off the peaks when you are about to fall. Is in my opinion done with a coach. That's what we do at the Happy Farm D. As Cory said, you and I have been working together 4 years. Has it been?
Around 4 years. I know.
And we've seen this start as an idea, and now you're a full-fledged speaker, you're a full-fledged author with a legit website and a following. And
it's a small one, but it's a following.
And a pending TED Talk that hasn't happened.
But I will do one, dang it.
Yes, you will.
That's the goal. So yeah, it's
darn pandemic.
I know. Shakes fist in anger if you're listening. So, but yeah, I really, I look back, because through pharmacy school, like I chose to be a pharmacist at 17, picked my path. And I think part of that was I really liked the defined path. And I had this internal struggle, because in pharmacy school, like, you get your teachers, you have like study groups, but I was like, not to get too deep into the old movies here, but I was kind of a one-man wolf pack. Like, I really felt like, I set these ambitious goals. I hit every one. Like, I got the residency I wanted. I got the GPA I wanted. I had and I had a great time in pharmacy school. And I was like, I didn't need any help. I didn't really have I don't recall having like a strong mentor. I got into the profession. I didn't really have a mentor. And so when I was deciding to try to like do some pivoting in my life, I'm like, why can't I just do this on my own? And I think that the reality is that nebulous world of what to do is so vast that despite many of pharmacists being very type A and very good, we learned how to play the game of pharmacy school, residency, career, because it's very defined for us. And when there's a world that isn't defined, finding a partner, a coach, a mentor who's walked the path, who's taken those lumps, who can kind of see the broader picture is important. And this is an unpaid advertisement for you, Alex, because I do not get paid to say that. But I mean, any other pharmacy coaching services that you're aware of. But like, that's what, I've really found the value with having Alex and others other programs I've done for speaking that have kind of created that lay of the land, created a bit of a process, giving me some context. Because the other thing too is like, for me, I went through pharmacy school as a single dude, famously single, not a womanizer, Alex. Real good job being single through pharmacy.
You're the one that brought up Hemingway.
I did not bring up that part of his life, sir. Thank you. But the reality is then life happens. You get a spouse, you get kids, and you have all this energy pulling you in different directions. There's only so many life levers to pull. So getting that mentor to help you will get you, like, you can do it on your own. Don't get me wrong. But do you want it to take 10 years or do you want it to take 2 or 3 or 4 years? Like, getting that investment in yourself to shorten that path is something that I found has been well worth it.
And I think the greatest thing that I get out of my coach experience from my coach is like the mirror of transformation, right? Mm-hmm. He shows you what you're saying, what you're going through, and saying, you're telling me everything that you already know to be true, but for some reason you're not accepting it. You're not leaning into it. You're not doing this or that, when clearly this is what's needed. And I love that honest truth, because it's so easy to tell yourself the comforting lies of you're doing everything that it's the right path. It makes the most sense.
I'm doing everything I can do and I'm not getting my results. I'm using air quotes for those just listening. Yeah.
Not that we're quoting anyone in particular, except
it's the Dr. Evil, like, this is what I mean. Right. It's the comedic air quotes that we delude ourselves into thinking that we're doing the right thing when we're probably not. And that's okay. That having someone to like have that honesty with you is important.
Yeah. And I think that that's every human's decade of the 20s, right? We try to do it on our own, but we find eventually at some point, it's so much easier when someone comes alongside you and becomes your champion, your friend in the process of transformation. I wouldn't be here on this podcast if it wasn't for those dear, sweet people that said, I'll help you, Alex. I'll be there for you. And frankly, go ahead.
Now you pay it forward. Like, you're that person for people, right? And that's the beauty of interrupting you, but also giving back with getting further along in your journey. So,
and we would love to do that for you, my dear friend and pharmacist. If you are thinking about a career pivot, hey, hit us up. Have a conversation with us. We would love to help you along your career journey. And even if it's not working with a coach, we have a ton of resources meant to guide you and help you on your career journey, whether it's learning about new career paths or negotiating a new salary or figuring out how to get a promotion. If you go to thehappypharmd.com, it's all there. It's listed in our resources. Happy to give those to you. Cory, it's so lovely that we get to hang out outside of this podcast when we put on our speaker voices and we talk about grandiose things. Actually, this podcast has really just been a continuation of what we've been talking about for the last 4 years.
Yeah, right? That's why it's so easy. Yeah, it's just sort of a quick and dirty recap of what we've kind of worked together through. But as I said,
indeed.
Yeah. I think it's like I mentioned, having, if you're listening to this, I hope hearing other people like share that the journey is not this just like straight trip up the mountain like that game on Price is Right, that sometimes you get to the top and you fall down. That can happen too. So, but yeah, it's a pleasure. And that's what, like, if you can't enjoy the journey along the way, then it's pointless. If it's this like grind to some unknown summit, then it's more likely that you will burn out before and stop. And burnout is why you're trying to change your job anyway. So what's the point of that? And that's where I've really softened on my I must do it all stance. And yeah, Alex, it's a privilege and a pleasure to always get to check in with you and be your friend and sharing this fun journey together.
A famous quote from Young Frankenstein: "The feeling is mucho." Cory, if people want to check you out, what website, where can they go to find you?
Start with CoryJenks.com, and that's CoryJenks.com. My parents were cheap. They didn't buy the vowel. No E in Cory. Thank you very much. But also, one of the best ways to connect with me is on LinkedIn. From my website, you can find my book, Permission to Care, Building a Healthcare Culture That Thrives in Chaos. From my website, you'll also be able to find, I have a thrice weekly newsletter called Get Through Your Shift. So if you show up to your shift a little early, doom scroll Facebook or Twitter or TikTok for 5 minutes and go inside and try to numb yourself, well, sign up for my email. And 3 days a week, you're going to get something that's going to help you along your journey, help get your mindset fixed up with a little knowledge, humor, and wisdom. And I get a lot of really good, fun feedback from that too. Because I wrote my book, and like I said, I can't stop writing. So for better or worse, you're welcome, or you're welcome, or I'm sorry. You can get to me there. Those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I try not to do too much time on there, just so that I have more time with like my thoughts. But I'm on there too. Connect with me wherever you want, but start with the website. That's a great place to start.
A wise decision. Please help this addict overcome his addiction to writing by signing up. Please, I encourage you.
Keep chasing that writing high, baby.
Thanks for joining me, Cory, and thank you for listening.